Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. Adam Cesare returns to the podcast for Horror Week. Adam Cesare came on way back to talk about Dead Mall with his friend and a co-creator of that book and illustrator, David Stoll. This episode, Adam comes back on the podcast to talk Clown in the Cornfield and Clown in the Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives, as well as preview and talk about his new upcoming book, audio, original. You'll just have to listen to find out. So check out this episode with Adam Cesare. But before you do, make sure you head over to capesandtights.com/horror for this week's content and so much more. I hate the word content, but there is a ton of content on there and ton of stuff on there, including mini podcasts, countdown lists, interviews with creators, and so much more. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as Blue Sky. And rate, review, subscribe, all those things over at Apple and Spotify and all major podcasting platforms. But for this episode right here on Horror Week is Adam Cesare, author, Bram Stoker Award-winning author of things like Clown in the Cornfield, Clown in the Cornfield 2, Video Night, Dead Mall, and so much more. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I should say welcome back to the podcast, Adam Cesare. This is, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Things, right? Welcome back. This is your time of year, isn't it?
It is my time of year, and I may not even have a voice by the end of this podcast, because that's how much of my time of year it is. My first event of the year was a signing at a roller rink. Very intimate affair. Not a ton of people came to that one. And then I flew to Winnipeg, Canada, which was brutal because there's nothing direct from Philadelphia, and it was just it was a full day of travel on either side, and I was there for one day, which was a great experience, but it was brutal. Just the day after 2 days after getting back to that, I drove down to Baltimore. Did Fright Reads, which is a great it's like its third year. It's the first time I'd been. Great little kind of mini con in Baltimore. I sold out of books like gangbusters like there. And then this is my week off. Well, no, that's not true, because at the end of this week I go to Colorado. I'm going to be a guest at the Telluride Horror Show, which is a film festival, but I have like writer duties because they flew me out. So I got to read and sign and stuff like that. But the rest of the time I'm going to be in those movie theaters. I'm not even going to see mountains. I'm not even going to know that. And then I'm with my family. I'm doing Hershey Park at the end of it. So it's boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a lot of fun though. If you're busy, it means that it's good for your career.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is. I was telling someone else about it, and they were like, I felt like I maybe was starting to complain because he was like, hey man, it's all additive. It's good problem to have. And I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I'm just tired.
Yes. And you did a signing actually. I did a collaboration with Daniel Kraus. I worked for a brewery during the day, and I did a beer with Daniel Kraus.
You're the beer guy? I didn't even make this connection.
So that's my day job as the beer guy. And I actually think I have one in here.
You have a Whale Fall beer there?
Where did I do with it? I thought I had one in here.
I must not have listened to the Kraus show. Sorry, because I would have known that if I would have listened to the show.
If you were watching, yeah. So this is Whale Fall. This is the beer for with Daniel. So Daniel I've been a guest twice on the podcast. Once to talk about Trojan, his comic book he did with AWA, and then the second time to talk about Whale Fall and the beer collaboration, so on and so forth. But you did a signing with Daniel in your area. So he did that. Stephen Graham Jones has also been a guest on the podcast, which Daniel did a signing with him.
You're collecting them all. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure this out. Yeah. And so, but that's pretty cool. I mean, Daniel's a great dude. He was up here. So we brought him up here. He was up in Bangor. I live in Bangor, Maine. Yeah. And he came up here to do a signing at 2 different spots and do a talk about the book and all that stuff too. And so we drove by Stephen King's house.
Nice.
But that's pretty cool. So it's cool. So
he's a great guy.
Even though it's not a small world, it is.
Exactly. But in horror and in the book world, it's amazingly how small it is. It's crazy because with him with that event, I think Doylestown Books had put it together, and they do a lot of events. And Chuck Wending lives in this area, and he lives a lot closer to Doylestown Books, who you should have him on. He's great. But they usually like have him when they need like authors in conversation. I feel like for horror guys, they go with him, but he was like having a book come out like 2 weeks later. So they're like, let's leave him alone and let's tap in Adam. So they brought me in, and it's so fun because I think we have such different energies. Daniel's a very serious man, and I think people can tell that from like who listen to the podcast with him. But he's like such a serious guy, and I'm like the least serious human being in the world. And I think he was like, you ever hear that like Tommy Lee Jones being interviewed about Jim Carrey on Batman Forever?
Yes.
And he talks about like how he can't sanction his tomfoolery. Like I and after the end of that like hour and a half, I truly felt like Daniel was like I can't sanction Adam's tomfoolery, because it was like the end of the tour too. It was like the second to last date where he'd like been traveling all over, and the first day bring me back into the green room and I look at him. I'm like, you look really tired. It was like the first thing I said to him. It kind of like a needling way, and he was just like, all right. So I feel like I brought the energy if he needed to rest. But I drove him to his hotel at the end of that. So he still couldn't even escape. He was like, do I pay $50 for a lift, or do I let Adam drive me? And I was like,
well, I picked him up at the airport, and we went to dinner. And then we had the next day, it was so Friday night, and then all day Saturday he spent with me, basically he did 2 events up here for us. On one, we smushed them into one day so that we could get it all in. And then Saturday night we were like done with the stuff, and I'm like, you should just go back to your hotel. Yeah. You've had enough of me. Just go back. There's a restaurant in your hotel. Just go eat there. And then his flight out was like at 4:30 in the morning. And I was like, I don't know what the Uber situation is at 4:30 in the morning right now, post pandemic, all that stuff. We're not a very big community. Yeah. I said, but the hotel might have a shuttle or whatever, but I'm also willing to come get you. I have a 2-year-old. He's probably going to be up by that time anyway, so it's not a big deal. And so he's like, no, we trying to figure out. He ended up getting an Uber, and was like,
he's a nice guy.
Thank God. Because I was like, you don't have to deal with me again, because my energy is pretty there too. Yeah. And also I don't want to have to get up at 4:30 in the morning, because I don't know what my energy would be like. It would be probably even more overwhelming at 4:30 in the morning. Me like
I'm the same way.
Up on caffeine.
I'm like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, all right, I had a double shot. Let's go.
Let's go. But that's awesome. So like, it's one of those cool things that like you're a competitor in a sense with another horror author, because you're trying to get eyes on your books and stuff, but you're really not in the same sense.
It's interesting, because I think there are people that have that mentality. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting, because I think not to like shit on those guys, but I think they don't do as well because they don't collaborate, and they don't talk with other authors, and they don't kind of hype each other up. I think that's like I do a little bit less of it now because I'm a dad. I'm a new dad, and like you find stuff falls through the cracks in like blurb requests and things like that. I feel like I don't do as much as I used to do. But look at this beard. Like this is a 5 o'clock shadow plus. Like I've been meaning to shave this for like 5 days. Like you know what I mean? Like so.
Yeah.
But I do think I'm a firm believer in that like idea of like, no, like especially if you like in the bookish community and people that you're more of a comic guy, and I think the same is true for comics too, because comics people are buyers. Like they go to the store and they're willing to pick up something new. They're willing to pick up something if it just the cover looks cool, or they heard a good thing about the creator. They'll pick something up. And I think bookish people, especially in the day and age of TikTok, are like that, where it's like they may not read your book first, like, and you may be competing for time and eyes, but you're not really competing for shelf space. I've found people will buy a book and then they'll read it 3 years later. I'm fine with that. You bought it. You're like, yeah, I got paid. Like that's the thing. Like, so I don't think it's 100% true. And I think it's especially because we all read each other's work, and we're kind of part of, for lack of a better term, like a community, or you can think of it like a French parlor of like this parlor of ideas and things that's going on. Especially we do the same podcast. We talk to each other. So like I never once saw myself as in competition with authors. That's it. Like really, like I even if it's like a similarly themed book or something like that, I really don't. Like I think there's other authors that it's easier to root for than not. And usually it comes down to I like their work. Like usually it comes down to like you were talking about Dr. Jones. Like I'm his biggest cheerleader. Like, and have been, I have been way since before Mongrels, and way since before the first big publisher book. I'm like a SGGA super fan. So like I do not see a competition there at all. And if it were a competition between me and him, I would get smoked. I would lose.
I was gonna say, no offense at it, but he would win.
Yeah, I would get smoked.
But I just you mentioned this
competition. You
mentioned this whole collecting thing. I collect the same mentality as I went to the there's a Bull Moose Music, which is a music / book
I know
store
Bull
up here, and they I bought Final Girls support group from Grady Hendrix.
Yeah,
that it's like 17th on my list of need to read. Like it's like so far.
My
and then
TBR
I also bought
is
Fear the Reaper from Steven. And so like those books I bought yesterday at the store, but like they're way off. Like they're not even and it's not like I needed to buy them because they were gonna like,
but they look nice.
I can get them.
It gives you a little dopamine hit and you want it. You like that's why I'm the same way. That's how I am.
Well, I got to go back because I didn't realize it, and I didn't realize I didn't grab it. Was they actually had a used copy of a hard copy of Clown on the Cornfield, and I was like, oh, I have a paperback. I need that hard copy because I got the hardcover of two, and I'm like, I got to the point where I'm like, I need them to match. I need them to be next to each other.
The hardcover of 3, I just saw just 2 days ago. I saw the full wraparound for the things, and you're gonna want the hardcover.
I'm gonna want it.
They're gonna make a nice. That was my one note on the design of it. Was like there was an element on the spine, and I was like, it'd make it nicer for people like me and like you if you did this to the spine. Yes. And my editor was like, oh, I totally agree. So like that. So we'll see what that tweak ends up doing. But
it's I don't know. I told because I was talking to Daniel about it. It was like I had a bunch of his books he was signing, and I was like, it would piss me off because his Teddy Bear Saga volume 1 of that only came out in paperback, but volumes 2 and 3 don't. Like I think 2 doesn't even have a paperback, and 3. It's one of these weird things. So like I literally have volume 1 in paperback and volume 2 and 3 in hardcover. And
that would drive me nuts.
It's so annoying.
Would drive me nuts.
But it's nice. They all read the same. I also own them both in audiobook too, because I'm a big audiobook person as well.
The audio is great. Yeah, the audio.
So Jesse Valinsky's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, she's. I hope I don't actually know if she's coming back for 3 because we're so far from 3 now that I'm like still working on the manuscript.
Yeah.
But the cover's done and the ad copy's done, and it's going to go up for pre-order soon. It'll actually, by the time this is up, people should pre-order Clown of the Cornfield 3, Church of Friendo, even though they're not going to get it until next year. But they'll like
you got to order it now. Get it ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly.
It shows the public. Like I always say that. Like the one thing I will say about the book market versus the comic book market is the fact that it's a little bit easier to get that out there because it is social more of an advanced thing. And the pre-ordering comic books, there's still people like even myself. I
don't know how to do it
so hard. Don't know how to do it.
It's so hard. It's like bring your diamond code and like show this UPC, and maybe your LCS has a computer system that can do it, and maybe they don't. Maybe it's just a guy with like a little credit card machine and a scratch pad next to him, like which is mine. Like it's when publishers are like push pre-orders for comics, I'm like get your shit in gear and I'll push pre-orders better because like it's
and
really
us on this side
if
you want to review it, like us on this side on the review side, if I want to review a comic book, a lot of times like the Boom Studios for an example sends out the review copies the Friday before the Wednesday release. So how am I supposed to promote a book that comes out you've already pre-ordered your store? Like my store is a small store.
They were better with that.
And IDW has a whole
especially with
folder.
Boom with the tie-in stuff. I think they're like having to like cut down on spoilers and stuff like that. Because I did a 40 issue or 40 page one shot for Power Rangers recently, and I think that was like it became like it kind of got like parceled up and became like news items because there were like things that I was doing with. There was a new introduced a new Rangers team and stuff like that. So I think it's like it makes sense that they have to be that way because like literally the second those PDFs went out, there were like 3 news articles about like spoiling like the big splash page where you reveal what the team looks like. And I was like, all right, that kind of sucks for the people that want to buy it like on Tuesday and they're going to see nothing but the Drake and Rangers like on their Twitter. But I understand why,
But there's also times that aren't even done yet. Like it's the crazy part.
Oh yeah, that's why. Yeah,
I'll get like I talked to Matt.
Letters,
I met Kent on the podcast about his new book Subgenre, and literally Caitlin from Dark Horse is sending me like the artist proof of the thing because it's not even ready to, like, because we were so in advance of the book coming out, but the pre-orders were like the following Monday, and I'm just like, how is anyone supposed to be interested in pre-ordering this just by the synopsis, by the solicitation, whether or not you want to buy something?
Yeah, it's Matt
This is
Kent.
somewhat, I guess so.
You
Yeah.
know,
Oh,
like,
yeah, that
I think
one's
like
different.
I think at
Yeah.
a certain point, like at a certain point, there's like creative teams on books that are gonna sell books because it's hey, it's Matt
who
Kent.
it is,
You're probably gonna like his books. Yeah,
But yeah,
I
it's
understand.
such a different market, but I like the idea that you can, in pre-ordering it, gives your publisher an idea of what they need to print and where it's going to go and so on and so forth, and
In
maybe
theory.
it needs more marketing. Yes,
in theory. They also could just ignore those numbers completely and then get like, oh, this book's a huge hit, and it's like, guys, you had sold out that print run on pre-orders just on Amazon. Like, why didn't you look at those numbers?
Yes. Daniel and I had a lot of conversations off air about.
Oh yeah. No, Daniel's a little bit more circumspect than I am, but I'll call him out. It's like, no, sometimes I don't listen to those numbers because I was
like,
yeah.
He would have been I would not have been surprised if Whalefall made the New York Times bestselling list author. People couldn't get it.
Yeah, no,
the book was like sold out at local shops except for the ones that were on his tour.
It was such a bummer, and it was not to say like what it could have happened with the thing, but I agree with you, but I don't want him hearing this and getting bummed out. But I think he knows too, because I was with him on the, I guess it was like a week into his tour, so it was kind of basically like the last week where you could have sold something and it counted in those final numbers, and it was just they were the Doylestown bookshop luckily had copies, so he had copies to sell and sign, but the Barnes and Noble was getting like 1 or 2 copies, and they were and then they were gone, and you couldn't get them, and it was like, guys, you could have guessed that with your promotional might and stuff like that, MTV Books, like that it would have done well. But I think to the publishers, I think in a certain extent they're so conservative in a way of like we don't want a single book coming back remaindered, and it's like an unknown quantity, even though he's had like 20 books, he's been on the New York Times bestseller list before. It's so depressing to me that Daniel Kraus, who's this I look up to as like, this guy's so much further along in his publishing journey than me. This guy's done so much better than me. He's had books that done so much better than me. And then you go to a signing with him, and it's like, well, Simon & Schuster couldn't figure out, you're not a known enough quality for them to print enough books. And it's like, I'm a little sympathetic to the publisher side because like, oh, supply chain's still messed up from COVID. Like there's no one can get paper, no one can get glue, like no one can get the physical elements to make books. So they're like, their margins are super tiny and they're like portioning it out. But it's like, you could have done a little bit better job guessing that, because it helps them. Like if that thing hits the New York Times bestseller list, it helps them because they get to put it on all the future editions. It ran through like 5 editions the week it was out. It's like, come on, guys. Like,
that's a whole nother thing that I don't understand. The same thing in the comic book market.
Just print more, man. Like you should have printed more. Like it's this year we're either super boring your listeners, or your listeners in the publishing industry are like putting me on some kind of list somewhere. This guy.
An episode earlier this week on this horror week thing we're doing, Joseph Schmalke, who's a friend of mine, who's a comic book writer and artist, his book 7 Years in Darkness at CEX Publishing went into second printing, and before like the second printing even was fully finished orders, they were in the third print. Why was the second printing I don't understand small?
That exactly. Yeah, it's like, you guys could have guessed that. Sometimes I think it's a little bit of hoopla, where it's like, oh, we get marketing to say it's in the 5th printing, but sometimes it's also like someone somewhere just is not doing the Excel spreadsheet right and is not reading it right. That's what I think.
So on a more upbeat note and stuff like that, but you obviously had Connor in the Cornfield came out, and then you had Connor in the Cornfield 2. Connor in the Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives just hit paperback. This beautiful paper edition, very affordable. Yes, it is. And actually, Amazon was like steals on some prices.
They knocked a couple bucks off because they made it like the original price. The price of the first edition of the first one in paperback was $11, and then paper became more expensive, and now this one's marked as $15.99, the MSRP, which is like crazy for a paperback. It's like $2 more, you can get the hardcover. But everywhere, all the retailers have it on sale anyway. So
it's great. So I love it's funny about something like this. Like with you, with I fell in love with Clown in the Cornfield, just before you came on the podcast last time, and then I read it again, and then read 2 and so on. So like I just mentioned, I wanted to read the hardcover and things like that. But every time I go into a store that sells books now, I'm always like, do they have your book? Like I'm always like, I'm not gonna buy it. I already have it, but I want to see if they have it because I want to see
No,
what's on the shelf.
I do the same thing. I wrote them. I don't need them.
And it's just cool to see the spine, to see the Clown of the Cornfield name out there and read it. And I'm telling people I want to read it. And let me actually look while we're on this. I'll look it up in a second. But the third one's coming out, like you mentioned. But let's back up for a second here quickly. A little synopsis on what's your horror like origin story? Like, how did you get into horror as the first one? Just like as best as you can without spending 3 hours on it.
Origin story is like my origin story in a way. Okay. It goes back so far, and I think a lot of horror fans and a lot of horror writers, if you talk to them, they have similar things, but mine is specifically movies. Like I'm I'm a movie guy, as you can tell by the shelves behind me. I'm a very, very big reader, but I'm like a cinephile first and foremost. And I think as a kid, I would go with my mother to Pathmark, which is a supermarket chain on the East Coast, and they had a little video rentals section in that Pathmark, and I from like one of my earliest memories is seeing the horror section, is seeing like the covers to horror movies and having them like scare me, like they're like them being so kind of forbidden that I like didn't want to look at them, but I was always kind of so compelled by them. So grew up in a household where reading and movies were like very prized. My dad's a huge movie fan. He's also a big reader, very big Stephen King reader. So I grew up with like nice Stephen King hardcovers on the shelf, kind of looking at him, always knowing that name. And then always like grade school and stuff like that. He was the kind of dad that was like, it's first grade, who cares? I'm going to take him out. I'm going to take him out and we'll go to the movies today. So like he would just take me to the movies. And he's just a huge movie fan. But oddly enough, the one genre of movies he's not that big a fan of are horror movies.
Yes.
That kind of became like my thing. It's like you want to be like your dad, but you don't want to be exactly like your dad, kind of thing. I would say that's my origin story in a way, which it's gotten carried away. But so like I just love horror cinema. I love talking about it. It's what I studied in college. It's what I wrote papers on. Like my work, it's interesting because the Clown of the Cornfield books are my kind of only novels, or the novels that are least textually about horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
The characters, it was very purposeful on my part. Like the characters don't talk about like horror movies. Like Quinn, the main character, couldn't care less. Like couldn't tell you your exorcist from your Exorcism of Emmy Rose. Like she couldn't, it's deliberate on my part.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I'd written 10 books where it was about horror movies in a very in your face kind of way. And then with the Clown of the Cornfield books, because they're meant for young readers, I didn't want to alienate any teenagers that don't have that base in horror like I do, like we do. It's the idea that I was writing them in a certain way to be gateway horror for both teens and adults that aren't big horror people. I see it as like a little bit of like proselytizing. Speaking of Church of Friendo, this idea of like, I love horror so much that I want other people to be a part of it. And whether it's your 100th horror book or your first horror book, I want you to have a good time. So that's what these books kind of are in a way. And I hear that all the time too. I hear it from teachers, I hear from librarians, I hear from parents that like, oh, my kid either wasn't a big reader at all or never showed an interest in horror, because they're like, a lot of the times like parents are horror people, and they'll be like, oh, if your kid's showing a little bit of interest, you'll be like, this perfect, Clown of the Cornfield. Yeah. And they'll tell me like it hooked them, or like now they've read 10, or they've graduated to Barker and King and Anne Rice and Rachel Harris and Stephen Graham Jones and Daniel Krauss. Like that to me is the nicest thing I can hear. And that's so charting that origin story to like other kids' origin stories is like bringing it kind of full circle. It's what interests me about writing kind of in the first place.
In all your books previous, I mean, was this written in your mind originally as a trilogy, or was this like Clown of the Cornfield did so well that you did 2 and 3?
This is a funny story. So there's 2 parts to that thing. It's not a trilogy. I would like to do 4. I would like to do 4, a quadrilogy, and then maybe take a break from it after 4. So I have in my mind, I have at least up to 4 kind of planned. But the first one came out August August 2020. The pandemic, stores were closed, everything was closed. And I'd written it kind of thinking, this is cool that I'm getting to put a book out with Harper Collins, big publisher, going to be a hardcover original. I was like, it's cool I'm getting to do that. But after 12, 13 years of being in the small press, being in indie press, kind of just being like, and I'd already had a book. I had a book called Mercy House that Penguin Random House put out. They just put it out as an ebook, and it's kind of like, it's that one thing on my bibliography like no one's read because it's just an ebook and they did nothing kind of to promote it. So I kind of had been burned a little bit by that experience. Not that I think that book's great, actually. And I think every day I kind of think about, like, wouldn't it be cool if that came out in paperback and we could relaunch that? But I kind of, my interactions with New York publishing at that point had been a little, I don't know. So I was like, it was like, your dream's coming true, but like, I was a healthy dose of cynicism. So when I wrote the first one, I was kind of like, all right, they're letting me do all this stuff. They're letting me put all this violence and language and R-rated stuff in a teen book. I'm getting away with murder here. This is going to be probably it. Like, I'm probably just going to get to do this. So I wrote it as a standalone, but because it's a slasher and because there's certain things that you do in a slasher, and there's an epilogue that like leaves something open as a character survives that you thought was dead. I wrote that just because it's what you do in a slasher. And the funniest thing, and don't read your Goodreads reviews if you're a reader or if you're a writer and you're, but like I was starting to, like, when the arcs were going out, I started reading Goodreads reviews, and 8 out of 10 of them, 9 out of 10 of them were good reviews. And even some in the good reviews, some people were picking on this, and they were like, I wish it didn't have that epilogue, because that epilogue just is like such a cash grab for a sequel. It's not even a real book, not even a real ending. Like, I got like a few of those. And in my mind, I was like, I didn't even track that. Like, that's just the way these stories end. Like, that's like, to me, I'm like, that's not a setup for a sequel. I had no idea I was going to write a sequel. Like,
well, it's part of the fear. It's part of the idea that you like the scary, one of the scary things about this, like, as being a horror book is that someone potentially survives.
It's the hand coming out of the grave and
yes,
Carrie. It's like,
exactly.
Like, this is the classic stinger at the end. Like, it was such a funny thing to me that, like, because it did affect me a little bit, where I try not to be affected by reviews, but I was like, when someone misinterpret something you thought you were doing, you just get like a little defensive. I'm like, wait a second, I and now it's funny because I'm being like, I want to write 4, like, but and again, the process of writing too, I was very like, I was a little worried, because I think when you do any sequel, there's a lot of work. I'd never done a sequel before. My first book, Video Night, people had asked all the time, like, when is there going to be a Video Night 2? Because it ends on a little open-ended note, Video Night. So people were always thinking I was going to write a sequel to Video Night, even though I had no intention to. And then with Clown 2, I was like, okay, I'm a little worried that it's not going to be as good. But what I found is that I like it better. I think it's a better book. And I think 3 is better than 2. And what I found is it's actually helpful to me to have this almost like these like obstructions, like this, like, you can't do that because you did it in 2, or you did it in 2. You can't do that because you did it in 1. And like the being very cognizant of not repeating myself. Whereas in a standalone novel, I'm okay, like dipping back into wells and doing scares and doing things because I'm getting reflexive with it and be like, oh, well, this can comment on this part that happened in this other book. Like in the Clown books, I want none of that. I'm like, no, all fresh, all new. The people love these books, so I want them to have the best possible time. So I actually find it helps me writing, and it helps me make the books better because I can't do certain things again. Which I like, and it's fun for me as a writer.
It's funny how you mentioned it better. If I were to put like stars on it, so Clown in the Cornfield right now in the time in my life, it's one of my favorite horror books that's out there. And this is not just because you're on there, and this is not, it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you again. It actually is not and if I were to put like a number on it, like if Clown in the Cornfield was 10 out of 10, Clown in the Cornfield 2 is like a 9.75 out of 10, only because you always loved the original, what got you hooked under the series more, if that makes any sense.
I'm not dictating anyone's opinion. I appreciate that, and a lot of people don't agree with me, but to me, there's things in that book that, like, I just love so much that I'm like, that's to me, that's top tier. And some of I feel like the writing's a little better, but I just, I appreciate that, and I'm happy with a 9.75. Like I'll as long as they're in the positive camp, I want to keep doing them. It's like when one comes out and people are like, well, that was the stinker of the bunch.
Yeah,
I would be a little sad.
Well, you can come back and say it was on purpose. It was a joke.
No, that exactly. That might happen with 3 because 3 I the way I pitched it to the publisher is I was like about like 30% of like the people that like the other 2 books are gonna furious. They're gonna hate this. Like
well, hopefully, if it replace it with 30% new cut.
What's wrong? Well, like, don't do that. And then I was like, no. But the people that like it are gonna like it way more. I pitched it that way because my pitch was basically like Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and Nightmare on Elm Street 2, like Freddy's Dead, or not Freddy's Dead. Oh my god, I'm gonna lose my horror card. Oh my god. Cut this out. Me not remembering Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Is it cursive? What is it? Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Mike Patton's in it. It's the oh my god.
Is it is it it's not it. It's the 2010 one. I was trying to look it up. I don't know. I don't know the subtitle. Oh, here you go. No. Oh,
Freddy's Revenge.
Freddy's Revenge. There you
go. So like those movies when they came out or so turned fans off because they're such a departure from what preceded them. And I wanted to do that in such a way that it wouldn't alienate people too hard because they like were a little aware I was doing it. So it's like that's where this fits in that slasher entry of like it's gonna do a little bit of that and then it's stick with it because it's going to do some things that you're very happy with too. That's but it feels weird to talk about a book that's not coming out until next August. So
it's it's funny too is I tend to talk to people about things and I'm always like, so what's next after this? And we're promoting the book that they're on right then. I'm like, they're like, this book hasn't even hit the shelves yet. I'm like, I know, but you always think about the future. But so you got to plan ahead. It's a book market. You got to get people to pre-order it.
Exactly.
But the funny thing is this episode will drop later on this afternoon after this episode drops in the morning on our website where I'm tying down my top horror novels that I'm into right now and past. Look towards the top. That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to give out the list, but it also includes books like Stephen Graham Jones and Daniel Kraus and Stephen King. So those are some lists to be on. Stephen King's my neighbor, so I got to put him on.
Yeah, that's true.
Not like
you got to make sure he takes out the recycling. Like,
I drive by his house every time I go to the comic book store. If that makes any sense. Or one of his houses. He's never there, but like, let's be honest.
I wouldn't be either. I'd have my.
It's turning into a writer's retreat. Maybe one of these days, the next big novel from you will be written there. Who knows?
Oh, I would love that. I want the Ghost of King.
Yeah, right.
Infusing my writing.
It's not so great. People are like, "Oh, you got the ghost from one of his bad books." That's
I get the Langoliers ghost. No, I love the Langoliers. No,
Steven, please don't talk to me like that. No. But so you have the third one coming up, which is awesome. And I do think that there is something to say. We talked about the collaboration aspect of it, and so on and so forth. Like if I'm looking for more books like this, like I was like, oh, I'm looking for more books like this. Maybe some people that Adam knows or likes or whatever might have these things. But also, I'm a big person of like, I want this to go on forever. You could write 10 Connor the Cornfield books because I want more story of the same world. And comic book fans, people who listen to this podcast are big Marvel fans or DC fans. They've been telling same stories in the same universes for years and years and years. And so to me, in horror genre, is that one of those ones you could go Connor the Cornfield 10. And
like I said, I have plans up to 4, but I could see myself doing it until I'm like put in the ground because I really do think there's something about the slasher that lends itself to that. And because in 2, we open up the world in a different way. And in 3, we make it really weird. So like, there's things you can do to extend that lifespan and extend not only my interest, but everyone else's interest in it. So I never say never, but at least my goal is at least 4. I'm already trying to get ahead of the curve because I know people are going to talk trilogy. And I'm like, not a trilogy yet. Don't stop. Don't stop it there. Yeah.
But the cool thing is too, when I first started reading number 2, Friendo Lives, I was like, how, or at the end of number 1, I'm like, you could have just stopped it. Like you said, this could have been great, and this could have been an amazing novel. You could have been selling this and pitching this for years, and it would have been fine. I love that number 2, but when I started number 2, I'm like, how is he going to do it? Like, with number 1 being so what it is, I was like, how is he going to do it? And then I a couple chapters and you're like, okay, now I get this. And then I was like hooked, and I was on the ride, and so on and so forth. And you create some, relatable and awesome characters. There's just so much things. And I have a friend. So I before I started doing creative directing job for my brewery and doing the design stuff, I was a manager of the restaurant, and I had regular customers that used to come in and so on and so forth. And one of the regular customers, Scott and Dina, they have a daughter named Claire, and she was like my surrogate daughter of sorts because of the fact that she was into comics, she was into stuff like this. And so every once in a while I'd get something, I'd be like, oh, so when I go back and buy that hardcover I mentioned at Bomo's, I'm probably going to be gifting this
Pass it to
over
Claire.
to Claire, because Claire will probably really enjoy it. Her birthday is actually coming up here pretty soon, so maybe there's this, maybe there's a little.
That's
little,
perfect. I love it.
But it's one of those, and I do think that one of the things I always talk to people about who write young adult stuff, or stuff that's more geared, is the fact that just because it's young adult does not mean it's for just young adults. It means it's for young adults and up. It means that young adult people can read it, but it doesn't mean it's only for them. And I do believe in this. This is one of those ones that if you want a great classic horror slasher story with some twists and some things in it, this is where you want to go. And I do appreciate
they're meant to be consumed that way. I think they're very much, I'm telling myself as a 35-year-old horror fan stories. And I think I want those to be applicable to teens.
Yes.
And that's the goal. But I think you can't get away from the fact that it's a 35-year-old horror fan is writing them. So I think that, it's going to be, I think actually a majority of my readers are adults, which is great, which is cool, but they're not the target audience, which I'm like, it's like, it's one of those things where I'll broke no complaints from them. I'll broke complaints from teens. Cause I was like, if a teen didn't like it, I was like, it's a bummer. You were supposed to like it. If an adult doesn't like it, I was like, hey, it's not for you.
It's not for you. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so on and so forth. But I understand it. I can see that. And I do see, like I said, though, this is one of those ones that horror isn't for everybody. And so there are people out there who really like the style of movie, Terrifier, and that style of movie. But that's not for everybody, for sure. It's made for a specific demographic, a specific group of people who like that style of movie. Whereas I feel like this fits in that genre that people might like, that might also like this, and so on and so forth. So I do think that it's like an overlapping audience.
It's like a Venn diagram of not everyone that likes Terrifier will like this, but someone will.
And I'm one of them, because I do like Terrifier pretty well. And this is actually
I really like the second one. I'm hot and cold on the first one, but I really, really like the second one.
Is that your same thing here? You got a friend who lives is actually more.
It's weird. No, it's just it's odd, because I think there's there's little things that happen in 2 that I think 2 is a little bit more have your cake and eat it, because 1 is so grim, and the way that it deals with certain characters is feels like a little to me overly mean, and not in almost like the story's not driving it, it's almost like the filmmakers are driving it to be this is the meanest thing I could do. In 2, there's a balance is kind of is found that's a little bit more palatable to me. While still having the most messed up. Oh hell yeah. Nice.
We did a beer called Terra IPA.
Oh man, that's so cool.
So we did that.
I'm gonna get some of these beers.
But so also we're pre-recording this to come out in on November 2nd, but this we're actually hanging out again this weekend, coming up weekend, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, with Damien Leone and David Howard Thornton.
That's awesome.
Because they're coming up to our convention here in Bangor area to hang out too. But we did that for the convention they came to last year. And so this year we're just
they get a lot of people. They get a lot of people in cons. They do the Monster Mania here in Oaks.
Yeah.
And I was very happy they were there, because I'm selling a clown horror book. And they're there, and everyone's there in full Art the Clown makeup.
I think it should kill it here too, because I think I wrote my first review. Number 1 was the idea that I should love it too, because being from Bangor, Maine, and living in a town where it is such a big thing, that this is a clown horror story in the same vein as someone like Pennywise, but it's not the same. It's a completely different story. It's typical kind of clown in a different way, but clowns are scary to a lot of people, so it's easy for you to write. Not easy, I'm saying easy as it's easy to write, because obviously it wasn't easy to write the book.
It's just there's room. And that's like
Yes.
when I first started, it was like these things were looming very large in my mind and wanting to complement them and not do the same thing. And it's,
Mhm.
I think, because it's a slasher, it's funny because it's closer to art. But it was, I think I saw Terrifier either towards the end of writing
Yeah.
one. So it was like, it wasn't much of an influence other than the
Yeah.
fact that like it was definitely an influence on two because it was around and I was
Yes.
cognizant of it and not wanting to be it. And I think it's very easy. I mean, Art and Friendo are very different characters, and I think, yeah, I like being in the melange of clown horror, as it is. And it is like you said, it's a shorthand to get people interested. It's like, well, if you like those things, you might like this because it's different, but it has
It fits
some
perfectly
relation.
too, because another
Yeah,
episode this week is my comic book store owner and myself are reviewing Killer Clowns from Outer Space for Horror Week too.
love
So
that
we're just
movie.
like on the whole clowns,
Love that movie.
theme right here. But yeah, so you've done this, you've done video night, you did Dead Mall, which if we don't want to touch much on Dead Mall just because of the fact that you can listen to our previous episode with Adam and David Stoll.
But we didn't get
Dead
to
Mall
hold this up
is
last time. This
no
is
trade.
yeah,
The
this
trade paperback is now out with a nice spot gloss on there. The
yeah,
best
it's
thing
a
is that now, because the trade's out, you can go pick up your Clown in the Cornfield 1 and 2 and Dead Mall at your local bookstore because
yep.
they can carry both of them.
Barnes and Noble
Whereas,
have it for you. Yep.
yeah, so that's great. You can grab both at the same time. And actually, I mentioned I put a little note here on my thing is that if you're in the Pennsylvania in your area, it's a possibility you go in these places they might be signed because I've definitely seen some footage of you out on the.
If you're in the Philly area,
Yeah.
a good chance that I like drive to every Barnes and Noble and sign them, just as like a something fun to do, and it helps me sell them too. So,
Yes.
yeah, if you're in the Philly area, good chance
But you
a
also
lot
can get
of
them
the ones
online
are,
too.
yeah, you get them and you get them signed online too.
Yeah. So
A local bookstore here ships them out, but yeah. So we're talking about books, physical books, and all these different things. But you're probably listening to this in your ears. We got a very special announcement, a book that just came out today that I'm hijacking Justin's podcast to talk about because he hasn't gotten to listen to it yet.
hold on,
But
I'll be back. See you guys.
yeah, there we
Adam's
go.
up.
But I do want to mention, we would be remiss if we didn't mention that I have a new surprise book that just came out. If you're listening to this on November 2nd, the day you're listening to it, it's called Influencer. It is an Audible original. So I think you gotta have Audible to get it. This is funny. They should have Amazon should have like walked me through the prompt about what I'm supposed to say. But yeah, so it's new original novel, full-length novel, not like a novelette or novella or short story or anything like that. It's I pitched it as YA American Psycho meets YA Silence of the Lambs, which means that there are two dueling POVs. The male POV of our bad guy is Christopher Briney from The Summer I Got Pretty, Summer I Turned Pretty, and the female POV is Isabella Merced, who's been in a million movies. She's Hawk Girl coming up in the DC universe. So they do a tremendous job reading this book, and it is scary as hell. So you're probably on a little bit of a Halloween hangover. And you're probably like, what could YA American Psycho even sound like? Because that sounds like almost like a misnomer of like, you can't do that. We can and we will. We did. So
We're gonna go there.
listen so please go listen to Influencer. Every warning in the book, every kind of content trigger in the book. If you're not we're talking about Terrifier and stuff like that. But if you're not willing to hang with that kind of stuff, may not be the book for you. But I'm immensely proud of it. I think it's I think it's my best book so far. And I'd like you to go listen to it. But that's that. That's my pitch on that. And I feel bad that I wasn't able to get you a copy so you could have listened to it before we recorded. But yeah,
I mean, I'm always willing to listen to no, but so the funny thing is I do intake a lot of Audible audiobooks. There was some really good ones. James Patterson just had one original with what's his name from Breaking Bad, Aaron Paul was on it too. It was a lot of those things are cool. I like a traditional audiobook, but I also like one that has more back to forth voices and more production value to it, and so on and so forth. My buddy just put out the one of our guests now. I'm not even thinking Mud 79. He's gonna kill me now because not saying who it's by, but Fearless Fred Kennedy, who wrote Dead Romans over there at Image. He just put out a audio drama of sorts called Mud 79, which is his own fan Star Wars story. So those are cool too with the sound effects, but there's a mixture of everything. And I think that's one of those things that for me personally on the audiobook side or the audible original is I drive 20 minutes to my office and 20 minutes home. And that's useless time in my opinion, because there's nothing to do.
I'm the same way.
And so like to me, I'm like, can I jam this in can I jam more stuff into my day and intake more stuff? And that's where I'm halfway through the Audible book for Salem's Lot. Never actually read the book before. And this is amazing. I'm going to bed at night, putting my AirPods in, trying to listen to it. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm listening to my audiobook. Yeah. So it's cool in that sense. So there's a mixture, and there's some people out there just won't pick up an actual physical novel. So having this to be an Audible and having as much as people hate to say it, but having the backing of someone like Amazon put this out, like,
no, they've been so good to me. And it was more of a conversation, because it's like we sold it and like Amazon bought the book, but they were like, well, we want to do it as an Audible original. And I kind of was like, I had to go into a meeting with them. My editor over there she's wonderful. And it was like, I not that I had to be sold on it, because it was very a very nice deal, and like very like, oh, you definitely want to do it. But I was just kind of in my mind was like, kind of what you were saying, like, or there some of these they release as podcasts, some of these like they do like different formats for, and I kind of really wanted to impress upon, like, have that meeting where I'm like, I want this to be a book. Like I talked about it, I said my new novel, I didn't say my new audio book or audio play. Like I really wanted to be like, I feel uncomfortable because, this is an Audible exclusive, but only for a certain window. So we are going to eventually do a paperback, because I don't want people missing out, because I know that it's going to be the first thing that people ask when I tweet it out and it comes out. It's not going to be like, cool, congratulations. It's going to be like, when can I get the paperback? Which I completely understand. So going into this deal was very much like, I love audio dramas. I love, like, especially as a horror fan, like that kind of storytelling is very evocative and works very well for the horror genre. But I wanted to be like, I wanted their assurance this is a book first and foremost. And they did, but they did little things where it's like the fact that they were able to cast two narrators, and that you can have this a kind of element of performance to it that it's built to have. Like I wrote the book for Chris Briney and Isabella Merced to read back and forth to each other, and it has a really nice, it has a little bit of music strung between the chapters. There's a couple in key moments, there's a couple sound effects. It's not like a full audio production, because it's not different voice actors and stuff like that, but it does have, for a gunshot or for a car crash or for a school bell because you're in high school, like having that ability to layer those in is nice, and does add to your kind of immersion, I think, in a certain way. So that's what this book is. And I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to lead with the idea that this is a book. And it's a damn good audiobook. I'll say.
Well, it's even the simplest fact of when you have someone reading an audiobook, they have knowledge that you don't have technically when they're going to read it in the microphone to record it, in the sense of inflection or loudness or things. So there's certain things where someone's like, and he yelled across the room, that a lot of audiobooks that are reading it, they're reading it in that way, they're yelling. So they already have read the fact that, maybe where they are. And so that's another thing. And like Salem's Lot, for example, like, oh, and he whispered, and they whisper on the actual pod. It's an audiobook. That's the things that I like about that. Whereas when I go to read a book, I'm pretty much reading it monotoned in my head and just getting the knowledge in there.
It's your inflection. It's almost your performance when you're reading a book. And there's something I like about that, and there's something I prefer about that. And then there's something I like about, because a bad audiobook or a bad audio performance can really can hurt things, and it can be like it can turn me off of a book. But luckily I haven't had that experience, and luckily this, again, it's like that. It's something that can spice something up. It's something that something that can be additive. And I feel like both of these, because they're such pros and because they're such, like great actors, it's like another collaborator. It's like I have 3 collaborators on this book, where it's like I have, normally it's just it's the writer and the editor, and that's the collaboration. But here it's me, the editor, the 2 readers, like, because it really does feel like their performance is, part and parcel of the book. And when we were casting them, it was like, oh, well, Chris Briney is like, that's this guy, like that's perfect. Like he in my mind, I could see him, cutting people up. I was like, this is the guy. Like, so it works. Yeah.
And it's another thing you can intake. Like, a lot of us are trying to get as much content as possible because of our love for whether it be horror or some sort of author or creator or something like that. And it's like, I could then go ahead and read Video Night, for an example, in a physical paperback. But while I'm driving to work, I'm going to listen to
You switch off.
It's like, I want to watch a movie with my wife, and I'm going to watch a TV show. So there's another thing. It's not, it's a novel, but it's another way to take a novel in. So it's like, even if you're like, oh my God, I've read 6 novels in a row, I need something different. And this would be that spicing it up and changing it up a little bit. There's not there's not like one's better than the other. I just think it's nice. And a lot of times, honestly, what I've done, and this is something that when the paperback eventually does come out, is I've actually sat down and listened to an audiobook in my headphones and read along with the book. And so like, just following along
all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was nice
that was another concern for me of like, I want to be able to have that. So I'm glad we're going to get to have that.
That's awesome. And Amazon's doing some great things. So recently this month, the creature feature stuff they did, there's like 5 or 6 short stories by some like heavy hitters. And technically, I mean, there's some, like, when I saw who was like listed on that thing, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good lineup of authors right there.
They know what they're doing, and they know what readers are interested in, because they have that's the thing, they have all the data. They have like they know, like, and like they know better than I know. Like they know better than I know, like, who listened to Clown of the Cornfield 1 and 2, and at what speed they listen to, and at what parts they listen to again. So it's like they know what interests people, and it's like I said, they've been nothing but good to me. And maybe
Clown on the Cornfield books have been on sale and like featured a lot more because they're trying to get your name up there.
I wonder. I've talked to the editor about that, where I'm like, hey, like, and they're 100% like, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, kind of thing. And I think they're just like, it's happy accident. But I was like, I want to be in bed with these people, because they control the means of distribution here. So like, I don't think it is that. I don't think it's that. I think it's just one of those things where it's like they see this works and they're like, oh, want it to work with me, and just been. I know, I understand. I shop small too. I like we were saying, like when people want signed books from me, I send them to Children's Book World right here in Haverford, PA. Yeah. I support small businesses whenever possible, and I think shop small whenever possible. But I also don't think I'm not a complete purist, where I do think the editors working at this division are like some of the best editors in the world, and some of the best editors in the publishing business, because Amazon has the money to pay them, because they pay them what they're worth. So it's like the things that they are producing. I almost said content. I don't like saying that. But the things that they are producing are good, because they have this the money makes the world go round. So it's like you said, that with the creature features, it's like they basically put out like a mini anthology with original stories from some of the best horror writers working, for free or for pennies. Like, so
it's included in your Amazon Prime membership. So it's like,
they already got you. Like, so it's like, I don't know. I kind of love that kind of stuff. And it's like, this, they could be the biggest company in the world. They could be not putting out good stuff. They could be not doing this. It's like, no, I'm glad they are. Like,
in the end, like I also feel like comics, trade paperbacks, novels, things like that are a completely different animal on a business like Amazon, because of the fact that the money, obviously they're making money off of it too, but in the end, someone else, like if you're buying I don't know, plastic baggies, there's not a creative person in the back end of that trying to get some money. It's just another bigger corporation making more money off of something that you need to live. Whereas something like a novel, for example, if I buy it at the local bookstore, yes, they're going to make some money off of it, but it still comes back to you and your publisher making the, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's still, So if you're going to not buy it on Amazon, if that makes any sense. Like, if you're not, my point is, like, it's like, don't not buy it because you're going to have to buy it on Amazon, or don't not listen to it because it's there. Like, you still should do that if it's in the end wanting to get it or not. Like, that's one of those things. Like, try to shop local if you can. Obviously you can't with something like Influencer. If it's an Audible original, you only can get it from Audible. Listen to it
for a certain period. For a certain period, like I said. So, but I think people are going to be, really into it and really impressed by it, because it's something very new for me. Because the Clown of the Cornfield books, for lack of a better word, are fun. I think there's a lot of serious stuff in them, and I think there's a lot of serious topics that they bring up, but they never forget to, not hopeful is not the right word, but there is something about like the themes of the books, is that, like, progress errs toward the just, or the, you know, and then like, even though characters die, we care about like there's what I'm saying is there's more of a moral compass in those books. In this book, it's something a little bit different for me, and I think something a little bit different for my readers and people who've read my books before are going to be like, oh, like this is Adam Cesare. Like there's going to be some stuff that you're like, clearly it is me, but there's going to be some stuff where you're like I said, it's still YA, but we're working more in that. It's like we're like Jack Ketchum YA almost. Like it's like that like these are a little harder edged. Things are a little bit more dire in this book, and it's a little bit more realistic and squirmy in that way, which is not the typical kind of horror I write. And I like making myself uncomfortable, like we talked about with the sequels. That idea of like, if I can push my discomfort levels very high as a writer, it usually yields good things for readers.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. It's so pumped. I'm always looking for new content. If there's new content coming out from you before number 3 hits the shelves, then I'm also going to be excited for this. So exactly. I'm going to be happy. There's something to get me by. I mean, there was Dead Mall, then there's this, and so this definitely influencer is going to be fun. It's going to be on my wish list to
want to have a steady drip. Yeah, want to have a steady.
Exactly.
That's the thing. It's so hard, like you're saying. Like it's like so hard promoting stuff where you're like, you write everything out of order, and it's like I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have another book come out between Influencer and Clown 3, and it's like but I don't even know. Like I don't even know from that point. Like it's been done since both of them were done. So there's a book that was written before, finished, handed in, paid for. I was like the check cleared like before both of these, and now I'm on podcast talking about them, and I'm like, well, I can't even talk about the thing that has been done for months and months and months. It's been done since before my daughter was born. It's like this book is older than her. Like,
and it's not even out yet. Exactly. And also, I just thought about November 2nd when this episode drops it's only a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving for people. So like you need something when you're traveling to visit your family. You gotta be in your car. You might as well throw this on.
Ruin Thanksgiving dinner. Just put this on. Just make your mom listen to this.
Oh, you're gonna put some music on? No, I got a new Adam Cesare novel we're gonna put on. Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
It's his most depraved yet. Enjoy.
Enjoy. How's that turkey leg? No, but so you did Dead Mall too. I mean, are you gonna do more comics? Like I know you did Dead Mall, you did Morphin Power Rangers, More Power Rangers, other stuff, but like
I've been so busy. I hope so. I hope so. That's the thing. I have nothing I can say without a hint of like, oh, being coy. Like I haven't had any discussions with people. I haven't set dates. I will tell you that I want to do a Dead Mall 2. I want to do a sequel to it that's kind of a spinoff, kind of a sequel. Like it'll serve both purposes. I know Dave's interested in doing it. It's one of those things where I'm like traveling so much and I'm here, there, everywhere. Yeah. The ball's a little bit in my court where I have to talk to Dark Horse, because I know I've even talked to Dark Horse about it, and they're open. The editor over there is open to it too. So it's just like I want it to happen, but I also don't want it to suffer because I made deadlines for myself that I can't meet or I'm rushing to. So I want it. It'll happen, I think. And as far as like stuff like Power Rangers and stuff like that, I love doing that, and that came together so quickly. Like the license stuff is quick. It's just like an editor reaching out and being like, do you want to do this? And then you're doing it because they have such tight deadlines on that stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm making the Power Rangers fight The Walking Dead at this point. Like I have to, like I'm going for it. So like that kind of stuff I feel like could happen quick. They got my number. Hey, I know comics professionals listen to this podcast. I would love to do
stuff. Do some more stuff. It's funny. And selfishly, I love your writing. I love your comics. A Clown in the Cornfield trade paperback graphic novel adaptation would be up.
I would love that. Me too. I would love that. I think there's movement on the movie, so I think that might help. And my goal was with Clown comics is I don't want to do adaptations. I'd rather do like side stories, because I have there's a bunch of time jumps put into the series. So I wouldn't mind doing like a Clown of the Cornfield graphic novel that's telling a new story with the characters we already know. There's some hurdles to that, especially because some characters, the way they look isn't as fully defined. So I like the idea of someone drawing like Cole and Rust and being like, this is what they look like would kind of bother me a little bit, especially if it's meant to be like a canon story, because I'm like, well, like it means you have to pick a lane as to what they 100% look like. We know they have like a certain color hair and stuff like that. But I'm like, oh, do we have to like, so like my mind goes to that, like my obsessiveness goes to that, like of like, is it, do I want to do that? And then there's, I think of all other ways of like, you can just do it with none of the main characters and just do a complete side story with that, too, that, and that's interesting to me too. So, and no one's talked to me about that either. So I would love to.
So some things like some of it might actually make the most sense to do it after the movie. If the movie comes in, hits theaters, then you already have like, almost makes more sense to design the characters after what the movie looks like, because that's what's going to hit the most eyes too. Because think about the Stranger Things comic book is not a Stranger Things comic books that are based off of just anybody. It's based off the TV show, and so the characters look like the TV show. Or even the new Star Wars stuff, and even some of the new Iron Man stuff looks like Robert Downey Jr. because the fact that they're like, we need to make sure that people know who it is and so on and so forth. So
Marvel's been doing that forever. Since the Ultimates line, they've been doing that.
Cast people in the comics, hoping
they to be movie. Yeah, they wanted to be movie people before they were movie people. Yeah,
you're like, oh yeah, see, you were in the comic book already, so like you might as well do that. Do that now.
I remember being so confused as a kid. Like as like I was like 11 or 12 when the Ultimate started, and I was like, why is it Samuel L. Jackson? Like I just didn't like. I kind of like it was like, are they making a movie? Is it going to be Samuel L. Jackson? I just remember being so like kind of not.
Now they're bringing the Ultimate Universe back too. Jesus.
Yeah, great. Which is cool, actually. I like that they did it. I just remember being like, I'm detail oriented. I'm obsessive in this way where I'm like flummoxed by an imaginary Clown of the Cornfield comic. Yeah. Like I was the same way as a young comics reader, being like, well, wait a second, this has to match up with
Exactly.
Like, Sam Jackson in the movie because they already drew him. So
you might as well. Now you're lying if you don't. But so like obviously Clown of the Cornfield's been super successful. You won Bram Stoker Award for the series, which is awesome. And I like belated congratulations on that, because that's a big,
thank you.
In the horror genre, if anybody doesn't know, that's a really big thing in the book genre in general.
It was a tremendous genre. Here, I'll show you. It looks it's a tremendous honor. I'll show you my my award. It looks awesome. It's just so cool. If people haven't seen one, it's a little haunted house.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's like sculpted. It's got all this cool like stuff on it, like these like vines and a giant centipede like coming out the back. Yeah. And then you open the door and it's engraved, because this is my Bram Stoker. So it says, superior achievement in a young adult novel. Yeah. Their little door opens and it's got my.
That's amazing.
There. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So cool. I'm like I said though, like it's one of those things that a lot of people, like if you're not fully in to if you just occasional reader here and there, or occasional, you don't really, some of the stuff you're like, oh, I know who Bram Stoker is, but like I don't like whatever. I actually, he's up there. I have at BAM Books A Million. I bought it for $3. They had a Bram Stoker pop vinyl. It was $3 on sale. I was like, I gotta get this. But yeah, so like it's a thing. It's like the same thing when I tell someone about an Eisner. They're like, what the hell's an Eisner? I'm like, well, if you're really into comics, you understand that an Eisner is like, your Academy Awards, your Oscars, the big awards for your things. And in horror, it's Bram Stoker is
Stoker and the Shirley Jackson and stuff like that.
Exactly.
It was an honor and a really cool thing. I don't know. And that and the Clive Barker blurb were really Clive Barker blurb was really like the
we got, I think,
birth of my child, getting married, and then like then that, because those were like, that was the really, really big thing. It's right on the cover.
It's on the cover too, and you also got Paul Tremblay though too. Like that's another one that I like. My wife's a huge The Cabin in the Woods, Cabin at the End of the World. Fan. She loved that book, and so that's to me. I get it.
He lent me an air of classiness. I think the fact that Paul was able to speak to it and endorse it, because it's like, it is a book called Clown of the Cornfield, and I am a very silly man, but like he's very serious also. He takes his heart very seriously.
That's awesome. It's exciting to see the success that the book series has gotten. And then Dead Mall, I loved Dead Mall. First of all, we've talked about it before, but David's artwork is absolutely phenomenal. It's top tier. It's incredible. So that's also amazing about that. And Justin Birch, obviously, with his letters, is just great book. People should read that as well. Get that out there. You can get that anywhere books are sold, as well as your local comic book shop, and you can get it digitally. All that stuff too. It's awesome with that. But yeah, your books, Clown of the Cornfield, Clown of the Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives, are available on Amazon Kindles. They're available on Audible. They're available on Amazon.com, your local bookstores, Barnes and Noble, everything. Everywhere you can get them. And if you go to your local bookstore and they don't have one on their shelf, just tell the Clark.
Yeah, ask
They
him.
can get him. This is
Ask
not like
him.
one of those things
This
where just
happens a
because they don't
lot
have
to
the
me.
show.
This happens a lot because I'm a YA author and people
Yeah.
don't know. People think that it's an adult horror novel and they go in and they look in the horror section and they're like, "Oh, it's not
Yeah.
here." When it was like, it's around the corner and like it's they're standing near it. They just gotta ask. Yeah.
And it might be sold out. It's
Yeah.
possible someone bought the last copy. They just haven't got one in yet. But just talk to the person at the counter, because even if they're like, "Oh, we actually didn't even know that. We don't carry
Yeah.
much young
Yep.
YA horror,"
It
they can
helps
get
me
it.
out. No, it helps
They
me
can
out.
order it from the store, from the distributor. It's possible to get. But like, so as we finish this episode, obviously we both know I have somewhere to go. But the what I want, I'm gonna email you about something else afterwards. But what's the horror book or horror movie that's like a must do every Halloween season that you must put on your list for reading? Or what's one that you look forward to the most, or you've watched the most, or something like that, just for those people who want like a little input.
It's funny because I have a little daughter and she
Yes.
she does books at bedtime, and it's funny because it's come back into my life because I had very little obviously before having a child. I had very little like picture books on my shelf, very little children's books, but I have the Tale Poe. If you've never heard it, it's like a folk tale. It's like an Appalachian folk tale, but there's a very specific picture book edition of it that like I remember as a kid a librarian reading to me and just terrifying me. But it's awesome if you get the picture book version of the Tale Poe. I'm completely blanking on the author and illustrator because it's like an as told by
Paul Galdone.
Yes, and it's kind of got an orange tint to the
Yes,
yeah,
border around it.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then
And who illustrated?
So the author is Paul, and it looks like maybe his wife Joanna.
Okay, yeah,
The author as well, and then it's Paul.
Yeah.
Actually, Paul Galdone. I think it's Galdone. Or Galdone did the illustration. So it's the couple of them from 1984.
It's awesome. I love that, and it's like the perfect thing to read your kids because it's like scary as hell, but it's also like not that scary. So I've been reading her that because she's 18 months. So she just grabs stuff off the shelf and she likes hearing me just read stuff. So like every once in a while we'll toss in the Tale Poe now, and I'm like, this is good. This is getting me in the Halloween mood. As far as movies,
have you watched anything more recently that like this year, like when you're watching your horror movies to get ready for the season or anything like that, you've actually been like, did you see Totally Killer yet?
I haven't watched it yet. I love Mad Men. I'm a huge Mad Men fan, so I'll watch anything with her in it. Little Sally Draper, Kieran Shipka. How was it? Did you watch it?
Yeah, it was good. It was like it was it was just good. It was entertaining. I would doubt that much. And it was like, if you're into those kind of things, it's got a Back to the Future twist in it, like meaning that like it's got that time travel stuff in it. Something you don't normally see in some sort of slasher horror movie is the time travel, which is pretty cool. But it was a fun watch.
It's definitely on the list for this year. Yeah. I have been watching a lot of older stuff, and as far as Halloween, like there's certain movies like Ernest Scared Stupid. I used to watch religiously as a kid, and I still every once in a while, especially when my wife and I like carve pumpkins, and we usually have like a little bit of a friendly competition as to who carves the best pumpkin. So it also takes hours to carve pumpkins. Yes. So we just I'll put on stuff like that. Stuff I've seen a million times. Like I'll put on stuff. Trick or Treat has kind of entered the rotation. I'll put that on. It's funny because I don't throughout the rest of the year I don't do a lot of rewatching because I'm so big into like I'm gonna die and I'm gonna not have seen half the movies that exist. So I'm like so big at chipping away. But Halloween's the one time a year that I give myself a little bit of a like, it's just
so it's this season. It's like Halloween, like this month. I got a couple of movies that we watch every year, and then it's like the Christmas time. It's like we watch a couple of movies that like I'm still in the same boat. I was just talking to Joseph Schmalke about this, which is the idea that I'm so into like I haven't seen that horror movie yet. Why wouldn't I watch that horror movie? I just watch that one instead of watching Halloween over again. I'll watch whatever. I watched The Sadist the other day that Jeremy Dauber, who's the author of American Comics, told me to watch, which is from like 1960.
Oh, the Sadist. Like I thought it was like I thought you were talking about new. You like the gas station one, the guy like the gun. That movie rules. That's such a good movie. And
I was like, I'd never seen it before, and he's talking on the podcast about it, and I was like, I guess I'm watching this one tonight, and I watched it. I was like, it's so good. It's just so I don't know. It's just something about it.
It's so dark for that time period. It's not what you're expecting at all. It's like a really harrowing movie. Yes. Really like I love that movie. But
I just think it's a fun thing, and I also think that as a horror fan like yourself, and someone who writes horror books and slasher books and things like that, like you live this all year long. So this month of Halloween time is like, it's like whatever. It's fun to do it, celebrate with other people and talk about it with other people. But like in the same sense, if a new slasher movie comes out in July, it's not like you're waiting till October to watch it. You're gonna watch it.
First day anyway, you know.
Yeah, so
exactly.
it's so
it is. But it's a little bit of like it's the time of year where it's like I'm more busy because of this like professional stuff, but it's also like it doesn't change what I'm watching that much, because it's like I'm always watching horror movies. So yeah.
But yeah, so it's a fun time of year. That's why we did this horror week, because I think it's like cool to do this and do it around Halloween because of that. But like I was also thinking the next year in the future, it almost makes more sense to do it like the beginning of October, so people have the rest of October to use recommendations or things to do this. But again, November's not a bad time to read horror.
November's the time to do it anyway. November's the time to do it anyway. Try extending Halloween this year. If you're not a huge horror fan, you should try living the horror fan life and just doing it all year round.
And like we said before, if you're trying to read something like you want something a little bit, not like say lighthearted, because it's definitely not lighthearted, but it's something a little bit more wider range of people will like it. It's something like Clown in the Cornfield would be a great option for you. If you're into comic books, Dead Mall is a perfect option for that sense too. And then again, if you want something more rough, not rough, but more
harder edge, we'll say. Influencers for you.
Influencers
not
for
to
you
scare everyone off, but again, it's one of those things. If you were an all sensitive reader, I don't do that for any of my books. I want everyone to buy my books and read all my books. This is the one where I'm like, you should
at least try. Here's the deal.
You should read up about what it's about before you check it out, because it's like, just proceed with caution, because I don't want to. Again, it's meant for a teen audience, so I don't want to traumatize anyone. That's
awesome. But I'm excited. I'm so pumped about that it's coming out. And like I said, it's one of those weird things. It's like, so there's such a love-hate relationship with Amazon now with people. But the thing about it is, it's like, in a sense that you're doing an Audible original book of your novel is like you made it, if that makes any sense. Like it's like one of those things that like a corporation that's that big is putting money and effort into an Adam Cesare.
It was a different kind of approach, and it was very, I was very fortunate that they wanted to do the book. But I think they did it in an amazing job, because I've gotten to listen. That's the thing. I've gotten to listen to the final files, but they didn't give me like codes yet or anything. So you'll hopefully, even before this airs, I'll have gotten you some kind of early copy, and you'll get to listen to it. So, and
then obviously keep me on the short list for number 3 of Clown in the Cornfield, because we will
of course.
We'll do a bunch of marketing on that too and stuff like that. Maybe we'll get you up here, do a book tour, come to Maine. Stephen King's hometown.
Hey, let's do it. Actually, we'll talk. We'll talk off mic, but let's really do it, because I would love to. I would love to Maine.
Sweet. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and your day to do this. Enjoy the rest of your week and have fun at Hershey Park, because that's a fun place too. But fun at Colorado as well. And hopefully we'll also be able to come back on and talk about the movie too at some point. That'd be amazing too. So now that the writers are back in the rooms too, things are starting to flow in Hollywood again. So let's get this going.
The spice is flowing.
Yes, exactly.
Fingers crossed, man.
And you have AdamCesare.com, right?
Yep, I have AdamCesare.com. I got all the socials. Go follow me on them. I make silly faces on TikTok. Yep.
And you open a bunch of mail on Instagram.
I love that. It's like, I'm like, this is good. That's what I tell my wife. I'm like, I don't have any kind of physical media addiction or shopping addiction. This is for us, baby. This is so I can open mail online.
This is marketing. This is marketing Adam Cesare books. So. But I appreciate you taking time. We love it. We'll highly recommend it. Again, one of the benefits I do about doing this podcast and so on and so forth is I get to talk to who I want to talk to. Adam's
I appreciate it.
Publisher didn't come to me and say you should do this. You should talk about.
No, they definitely didn't.
So it's the fact that I choose to say that I want to talk to Adam on this, because I do actually endorse and love and read and actually care about these books. So I will say wholeheartedly, I recommend this. Not that we're right. Not that I am the end all be all what you should do.
You are though. In this instance, you are though.
Yeah. So go out and read it. But yeah, thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you.